A very good evening to all our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Toivo Njebela, your host. Tonight we are going international. We are joined virtually by Saviour Kasukuwere. He is an independent presidential candidate in the looming harmonized elections taking place in August in Zimbabwe. Mr. Kasukuwere is a former minister, and he is bouncing back now this time around as a presidential candidate standing independently in that election. Thank you, Saviour, for making time. The first thing that I wanted to ask you really is that we've seen that there's a court interdict that is being sought in Zimbabwe by one of the ZANU-PF activists saying or trying to prevent you from standing on grounds that you've been out of the country for 18 months or so, and therefore technically you cannot stand. Is that a foregone conclusion that you can actually not stand in that election?
Well, that's what in law we call a Brutman Foreman. It's of no force or effect. It's just an attempt to kind of like intimidate or try and impede my standing. From the little we've gleaned from the discussions of the courts last night, it's clear we are proceeding. They've been given 5 days within which to settle. There was a court management process yesterday, case management process, so that will be handled in the next 5 days. But as it stands, this candidate is one of the recognized candidates by ZEC, and we are proceeding with the campaigns and making all necessary preparations for the elections on the 23rd of August, 2023.
I'm just curious, Saviour, as to what was sort of the turning point that you decided I have to participate in this election as a presidential candidate. What is at what point and what sort of motivated you to do that?
Well, it became increasingly clear that there is a kind of fatigue in the leadership. People are tired, and you need some energy to revive our economy, to restore Zimbabwe's image, and the myriad of challenges we face require somebody who has the mental ability to handle the challenges. And I decided that after having looked at what our country is going through, the poverty levels, the collapse in the economy, it's a continuing downslope. And I thought, no, we must intervene. One, also to make sure that we restore the constitutionalism in our country. We restore our country back on the basics, bring it back on rail, work on the economy for the next 5 years, deal with this polarization. Zimbabwe is grossly polarized. The people in Zimbabwe are either this party or that other party. And I don't think that is in any way now a solution for our people. We need to depoliticize in a large measure our society and concentrate on bringing food on the table, getting the basics right. Our infrastructure is decayed. Water to the homesteads must come through. There are more challenges that are confronting us than allowing incompetent people to take care of our society and country. And that's why I decided to put my hand up. But also it was because of overwhelming invitation by various players from the old political parties and PF. People in there said to me, please come and serve us. We have a challenge here. We have a situation. In the other political movement, people also came forward and said, we need somebody who can unite our country. So I come in here to build a united front to confront the challenges that are bedeviling our people on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean, those challenges, Mr. Kasukuwere, can they really be attributed to the age and fatigue and these old perceptions? I mean, whether you were 25 years old or 75, issues of inflation, issues of a very constrained democratic space. Sometimes it's argued that there's a lot of constraint in that space also. Is it a question of age, or is it or is it simply that you think you can actually do better than the incumbents?
Well, obviously, their failure to resolve the issues, their failure to get the people out of this situation, requires, therefore, that some people must step forward. You can't just watch and start complaining. You have been criticizing for a long time. But now and again, people ask, but why are you not getting involved? And that's why when the call came through from various people, various groupings in our country, for me to participate, I lifted my hand and said, okay, I'll be available. It's just not a question of age. It's also about craft competence. Are they able really to deal with the situation at hand? It's clear that the past 5 years has become worse than what we had before. And if we don't step in to resolve that challenge, it therefore means that our society and country will continue going even through this crisis for a very long time to come. Look at it this way. We have thousands and thousands of our countrymen who are living outside the country. We have a country which is not united at all. We have sanctions on our country. We have a lot of things that have not been attended to. And my view is that that time has now come for us, one, to restore, revive, to renew, reconcile, and rebuild Zimbabwe. So when I start off with talking about the revival, it is a leadership we must revive. We need more and new energies in the leadership of our country. We need experienced hands on the deck, people who can be able to provide a better vision for our country, a better direction, and ensure that the country is run on a very, very clear agenda and purpose. That is to improve the livelihoods of our people. Secondly, we need a leadership that will seek to reconcile the deep-seated differences in our country. I have put up myself for that task because I am up to the task. I am quite familiar, I'm affair with most of the issues that one can talk about in my country. We need to bring back that Zimbabweanness amongst ourselves, that polarity, the toxicity must go. We have the issues of what happened in the past, in Matabeleland, and so forth. We must resolve these issues. There are challenges of violence that have happened also in the past. People must take responsibility and account for it. At the same time, bring back people, rebuild our bridges, and become Zimbabwe again. We have an economy that requires revival. And that economy cannot come out of these doldrums if we continue in the way we are, the inept way where corruption has manifested itself today into something else that we can't control. We need to control corruption so that we can restore the economic viability of our nation. We also need to ensure that the economy, there's fiscal consolidation. We've got to look at the macroeconomic fundamentals in our country. We've got to tame inflation. We have a lot of work. Get jobs, create opportunities for young people, get our own people also to become masters of their destiny. They must become the forerunners in the creation of a Zimbabwean economy. And fourthly, we need to revive, we need to reform our institutions. Most of our institutions today are way, way beyond their shelf life. They must be brought back into the modern way of doing things. We need to reform them, to recalibrate them, to ensure that they serve the greater purpose of our society and people, as opposed to being a partisan body of institutions, let alone which are weaponized against opponents and those who disagree with the government at any given time. And lastly, we also have to rebuild Zimbabwe. There is a whole lot of work to be done. Zimbabwe must be rebuilt. Zimbabwe needs infrastructure. Zimbabwe needs roads. Zimbabwe needs hospitals. We need to cut the distance of education where our children, how they travel in the rural areas, to probably maybe less than 230 kilometers. And we have to be very solid about these plans. We need to start being inward looking. What is it that we must do to uplift our people, as well as complete some of the programs that President Mugabe started, the land reform program? Let's bring it to a successful closure and completion. The empowerment of our people, these are all legacy issues that must be handled within the framework of a new leadership in the government.
Yeah. You you just touched on the very crucial topic of land reform and you spoke about wanting to bringing it to a logical conclusion. What would be the logical conclusion to that thorny issue in Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe must ensure that the tenure system is strong for those who have been allocated land and those who are on the land, for them to be able to invest and ensure that their investments are secure. The thorny issue with regards to our land reform is we have left it open-ended. In other words, we have left it at the whim and caprice of a minister to chop and cut and just basically victimize somebody. If they don't believe that you are supporting the head of state or somebody else, you then lose that piece of land. That is out. We want to restore the fungibility of our land. We want to restore the capacity for our and ability to produce for our people. In so doing, the land reform must be able to attract investment directly from the institutions. We have gone for so long using various other measures, the Reserve Bank, government supporting the farmers and so forth, but we want to bring back the financial institutions. So the question of tenure security is so critical and crucial in our deliberations. As we are seated here, we want a tenure that is title deeds, the list is a 99-year transferable ownership of land, so that those who have land can be able to hypothecate, use it as collateral, and develop the land. Because without development, we're wasting our time. And that equally also means we must resolve and put to bed the question of the compensation of the farmers that were on the land, so that at least as we move forward, we can't have this matter recurring again and again. We've completed the land reform program almost about 10, 15 years ago, but it's still haunting us because we have to get to a stage where there is closure on this major important issue, the land reform program.
Yeah. Do you think, Mr. Kasukuwere, that having been out of government for nearly 6 years now, having been out of the ruling party, you were expelled from the ruling party in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, that you now have the benefit of seeing things differently? Because you spoke about how things worsened in the past couple of years that President Mnangagwa has been in charge. And some people would argue that things have actually been exactly that. It's just that you couldn't see them because you were inside. Does it give you a bit of a benefit to see things differently now that you're an outsider of some sort?
It's important to take a break. I mean, even soccer players, after 45 minutes, they have to take a break, and the coach comes in to give them tips on which side, which angles to look at, and enhance the strike force, strengthen the middle force, as well as ensure the defenders and place in the goalkeeper. The same goes with life. You must be given an opportunity to review your work. Yes, what happened in November 2017 happened, but I still thank the Lord, He kept us alive. But secondly, it has given me an opportunity to understand, one, the challenges that face our people in the diaspora, how when human rights are violated, the pain that comes with it, and as well as setting up base outside the country after so many years in the country, and the whole stability or luxury is affected. And these are lessons that I have now been able to consume, I've been able to digest, and I now have a greater understanding of exactly what must be done to protect the rights of our people, to ensure that we have a stable economy that looks after its people, to reduce the number of people who have to leave the country into migrant labor in various other destinations and countries. These are some of the lessons I've learned. But apart from that, I've also learned how other countries are progressing, how they're taking charge of their countries, and how they continue on a weekly, daily, hourly basis to expand the horizons of their people. South Africa's economy is one example. Namibia is one example. Mozambique is coming out of a devastating war, but they are doing extremely well. And these are some of the examples one wants to look at closer home. But more importantly, it's also an important time to look and learn What is it that we should do as a responsible member of SADC? Zimbabwe is a member of the SADC community. Should we allow Zimbabwe to remain a drag on the region? No. Zimbabwe must actually now become a major player, must become a giant that it was yesterday, who will contribute to the well-being, development, and the growth of our SADC region.
Yeah. Do you think, Mr. Kasukuwere, also that, again, with the benefit of hindsight now, that there are things, you were very, very close to President Robert Mugabe. Some people say that you were his blue-eyed boy. You spoke about his legacy here and some of the things that he started that your administration would conclude if you were to be elected, meaning that you still hold on to, you hold him in high regard. But it was during his time that a lot of these problems that you're enumerating actually started. If you were to, I don't know, magically speak to him today, or if this was 2013, 2014, when you were serving in his cabinet, what are some of the things that you would be telling him today to say, Mr. President, but here, or is it a matter of really having been very, very proud that everything was going smooth?
No, you're quite correct. There are issues, there are positions that we took, and there are areas where we could not have done things correctly. But certainly, during our day and time, it doesn't necessarily mean, because in cabinet we were quiet. I would meet President Mugabe tomorrow and say, Chief, I told you about the land question, that let's put closure to the ownership process. President Mugabe had different ideas. One of the last cabinet sessions we had, we discussed extensively around the land question. And I said, Mr. President, we have empowered our people. We now have the land gentry in our society. But we must win off from the public fiscus. They can't continue to draw resources from the state, and on a year-to-year basis, the proceeds of their hard work at times far less than the ability to repay the loans. Hence, we end up carrying them for much more longer. And I said to President Mugabe, let's give our people title. Let's give our farmers security of tenure so that they can walk into the various banks, re-establish the agri-divisions of those banks for them to be able to get loaned, financed, and go in to do exactly what they want in their own right. And secondly, through the banking sector, they can also be able to expand their market base and ensure that whatever they get is being used to achieve the objectives as set out, obviously, by the state. Secondly, there are areas, obviously, to do with uniting our people. He did quite a bit work on it, but a lot could have been done. I think in hindsight, we need to look at some of the laws we have, the posters of this world. They kind of like, and they still do, of course, restrict people's freedoms. Those kind of legislation, and now the other ill-thought Patriot Bill, should not see the light of the day, because at the end of the day, you cannot stop or let alone muzzle people from speaking their views. There are other areas, of course, in terms of the economy, where we should have done much more. In terms of the health delivery institutions, we must have done more, but we did not keep quiet. We used to raise these matters, but we were also constrained in terms of the fiscal space, in terms of other exogenous factors that may have made it very difficult for us. But coming in now, after so long, I think I have an answer.
Yeah. What are the, and you've been pretty open, and sorry if I keep going back to the past, but you've been very, I've watched various of your recent interviews, and you've been pretty open about the past. If there are things that you could tweak today from the past to say, we could have done this differently, we could have done this differently, what are some of those fundamental things that you think you could have done better, that could have been done better?
I think there are lots of things that we would have done. One, we took too long to entrench our people in the economy. We have suffered from the adversity of sanctions because we had not prepared our people sufficiently to become involved in the economy. We have kind of adopted an approach that was, let's get foreigners more and our people will come second. If I was to have another opportunity, I'll ensure that the people of Zimbabwe are first and are leading the charge in developing our own economy. There are things in the political circle we didn't do, which should be done, like I alluded earlier on to the human rights, that perhaps we should have just done much more to entrench our rights. But of course, our rights are captured within Chapter 4 of our Constitution. Very, very important that the rights of every Zimbabwean is of paramount importance, and it's covered by the Constitution. But we have allowed for individuals to end up with more authority than the state itself. And that was a big mistake. The other mistake I could also look at and draw lessons from is on the social sector. How much our education has collapsed, yet it was a beacon of hope in Africa. How much our health institutions are now underfunded to the extent that we've closed some of the major referral centers. And yet our population is growing and they must be managed by these hospitals and attended to.
The sorry, I'm a bit under the weather. That's why I'm clearing my throat a lot. But there's also questions around your true intentions here, Mr. Kasukuwere, to stand. You know, Zimbabwean politics has become also very vindictive, as we have seen. You are one example of that vindictiveness. President Mnangagwa was being hounded out in 2017. He ran away, came back, a coup took place. Some of you had to run for your lives. And there's this sense that perhaps you are seeking to return and do to others what they did to you. That is one school of thought. The other one is that you, of course, you are known to be a very rich man also, but of course, if you are having businesses in Zimbabwe and you are mostly out of the country, you would do better if you were to be actually at home. We will talk about later why you are not at home actually. But so it's revenge, or is it revenge? Is it passion for Zimbabwe, or is it a quest to return and start making more money like you did in the past?
No, make a contribution to the economy will be the much more appropriate way. If I'm back in Zimbabwe, I can also make a contribution to the overall economic development of our country. However, with regards to a direct question whether I'm doing this because of revenge or some form of retribution, no. I've accepted that things went wrong in the past. I must be one also who accepts that if you have to move forward, you must be prepared to forgive. We did a lot of damage to each other as Zimbabweans, and I don't think any one of us can be a saint. But it is these hard lessons that I've learned that have ushered me into this new path, that have made me convinced that we can actually do better for our country. Now, what happened to me when Mnangagwa was vice president and so forth, yes, that is what happened to me, but it did not happen to all the people of Zimbabwe. Hence, my constituency is not my house. My constituency is the people of Zimbabwe. What I'm talking about is what I will do. And if there is that trust that is there with the people, there's a social contract, we will proceed to ensure that we change our country for the better. You can't keep vengeance or let alone anger. Hatred is an expensive commodity. If you want to know how expensive it is, just hate somebody. That person, you want to wish them away, but you can't. It is God who wishes his people away. So that makes a huge difference In my conception, in my politics is based on simple things. We've got to get our country out of the woods. We've got to unite our people. We've got to revive our economy. We've got to reform our institutions, and let's rebuild Zimbabwe.
Yeah. You see, one of the things again that scares a lot of people in Zimbabwe and those that are in the diaspora, including a size of Zimbabwean population that we have here in Namibia, is that the country is also not dealing strongly with corruption and enrichment and cronyism. Recently, there's currently a case in the Zimbabwean court. It's a civil case where the daughter of former President Mugabe, Bona Mugabe, is actually divorcing her husband, or they are divorcing. And what we have seen in court papers in terms of the estate of a 33-year-old woman owning 21 farms, that, Mr. Kasukuwere, is so scary. A 33-year-old young lady, former daughter of the president, a daughter of a former president, owning 21 farms. There are talks of mansions in Dubai. I mean, these things are so scary. That's why, my president here, and I'm not saying that he's a better president, but our president here, Hage Geingob, has one farm. He's 82 years old very soon. And this is a man who has been a prime minister twice. Bona Mugabe, where has she worked even to make so much money to acquire 21 farms? I'm not asking you to speak on her behalf, but I'm saying these are things that scare Zimbabweans from voting people like yourself who were in the system that produced this kind of millionaires, if you like.
First and foremost, Bona is not here to answer for herself. Secondly, yes. I'm not sure about the numbers, the 21 farms she's alleged to have taken. I'm not so sure. I don't want to comment that I don't know, but I don't think there is an accuracy in what you're putting across. Thirdly, do I want to see what she's done? Certainly not. If what she's saying, what is being said is true, then it's appalling. It will be appalling. I will not hesitate to say this is wrong. But equally the same, we've got to guard against manipulation of news. We've got to guard against individuals who come and tell you things that are way, way out of sync and out of reality. So as far as I'm concerned, the Simba issue and so forth, and the husband Bona, is a private matter. What concerns us is when it starts talking about assets that were in the hands of the state or allocated to the father. But that be as it may, I think a lot still needs to be done to fix the Zimbabwean question. It's not just one family. There are other families today who have the propensity of taking over gold mines from whoever owns them without authority. These are the matters that concern me. I'm not going to be dragged down the hill by individuals. I want us to keep focused on the question of our people, on the general direction of where we want to take our country to, and how we should conduct ourselves. Any leader who finds himself or herself having to defend those nefarious acquisitions will not be sincere to the people of Zimbabwe.
Yeah. The 21 farm thing, and I'm not asking you to respond to it again, but I'm just saying that it's in court papers because the estate has been laid bare in the courts, and both parties are claiming to say how do we split the assets, and that is how it came about. Maybe if there was no divorce, we wouldn't have known about this thing. But if you were to be elected president, and in what way are you going to deal with corruption without sounding like it's retribution? Because in Angola, for example, when the current president took over, he dealt with some of these legacy corruption issues, some of them very sensitive because they involve children of the former president. The daughter is, we don't know where she is now in the world. There's a son who was in jail not too long ago. How do you make sure, or do you just say, okay, fine, we start afresh now, going forward, this is what is going to happen, or are you going to say, how do we get back what has been stolen from the masses of our people and then kick off from there?
There are laws that guide us, and I want to remain a stickler to the law. If there are people who are known to have abused or taken people's resources, it should not be a secret. Let the Zimbabwe Republic Police descend and deal with that matter as a matter of urgency. We also have institutions, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. We have the Criminal Investigation Department. With various other instruments, we can bring on the table and tame corruption. It must never be fought as a personal battle, but it must be an institutional fight where each and every one in Zimbabwe knows that this fight is my fight. In other words, once people take agency and ownership of the process, the rest is history. So we want to bring down corruption by using the law. If what you've done is against the law, we'll ensure that you save your time. That's how we should be, because there is no missing page in our legal status in terms of how to deal with those who cause problems to society.
Yeah. I have two more questions for you, Mr. Kasukuwere, before we close this very important conversation. One is, how are you going to deal with the issue of sanctions? Because you see, the problem with sanctions in Zimbabwe is that they seem to really affect only the common man. As much as they were designed supposedly to deal with the likes of yourself, you were banned, you were put on the sanction list of the USA, I think 2003 already. Or so, and but you have continued to thrive. You are a successful businessman. I've seen your house on the internet is the size of a shopping mall here in Windhoek. So you are not affected by this, but those that have imposed these sanctions on your country are demanding a set of compliance with the administration of Zimbabwe, whether it's now under you or someone else, in order to remove, as conditions to remove those sanctions. What are you willing to do? It's a give and take situation, and again, it affects the common man in Zimbabwe. What are you going to do to make sure that as much as you want to retain your sovereignty as a country and say we are an independent country, we have our own rules, and we are not going to succumb to outside pressure, the reality is also that it actually affects your citizens, and they want to be back to where they were before the sanctions were imposed?
Admittedly, the sanctions have had debilitating effects on society. Sanctions have given rise to what I call the twin challenge of corruption. These are Siamese twins. They have developed because those stealing will blame those who are running the country and say, you are failing to do what you must do. The business persons are attacked by government for getting forex and so forth. And equally the same, government attacks the businesses and say, you know what, or political parties, you are traitors. You have sold us outside to the outside community. Hence my call to have a unified voice. I shall set up a government composed of 7 technocrats as given me by the Constitution, composed of people from various political persuasions in Parliament. And we take this fight as a united people and say the challenges of the sanctions are as follows. This is the message President Masisi got when he went to the United States of America. They say, can you look at Zimbabwe and let's get even the elections. Free and fair elections are necessary. If Zimbabwe has got to get out of this sticky situation of sanctions, let's have free and fair elections. And all the contestants and participants will be able to say, we're happy with the conduct of these elections. Then we proceed to engage the world as a team. Nobody individually can succeed if you do not take along the entire team. So it's a team effort that's required now. Team Zimbabwe to get our country out of the sanctions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, why I'm asking that question, of course, is even here in Namibia, which is a very small country in terms of population, we are 2.5 million people here, but there's a number of Zimbabweans, quite a number of Zimbabweans here, and they are in two main categories. Some are in the very good categories of, they are university lecturers and professors. Some of them own businesses here. Some are engineers. Things that or skills that would have been poured into the Zimbabwean economy and society if it wasn't for the current situation. And then you have the poorer poorer Zimbabweans here in Namibia who are selling covers, cell phone covers and screen covers. People are really suffering. But coming from a country that is so wealthy, when we are reading about the gold mafia and how much money has gotten taken out of the country, it's so scary, and I'm sure it hurts them a lot to hear and see this kind of stories. But so hopefully when you get elected, Mr. Kasukuwere, you'll be able to provide a platform for them to return home and build their lives properly there. You don't want to be in a foreign country selling recharge vouchers. You want to be in a foreign country, maybe doing something big, because
it's not a worth investment.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, in fact, I agree with you, my brother, that
yes.
a number of our countrymen are working way below their station in terms of education. They can actually be assigned as deep tech managers when they're holders of a degree in agriculture. But because Namibia has its own issues, South Africa has, I think we still have a responsibility to stabilize the region, to fix our politics, and get our people. The Exodus, a huge movement of our people, must begin. Getting our people out of South Africa, out of Namibia, those who want to come back home. And we have to create opportunities for them to say, we have a stake in our country's future. They must work towards a goal and achieve it. Nobody wants to flourish outside these communities. We all want to succeed in our own areas where people can identify with my success. Hence, my call is to the Zimbabweans, be patient, but come 23 August, let's score. Let's ensure that what has to be done is done to redirect our country and have a better leadership.
Yes. The final question to you then, Mr. Kasukuwere, is that the country cannot function properly with a muzzled democratic space, whether at institutional level or at individual liberty level. Job seeker license is in jail. Hopewell Chinono was in jail, and I'm not saying that journalists are above reproach. I mean that they are above law and that they shouldn't be measured or held to the same standards. But a society that doesn't have those basic freedoms also struggles to thrive. I mean, people are on the streets demonstrating, and then they have, guns and tear gas being put on them just for expressing a different view, and that is so scary. What kind of assurances can you give Zimbabweans watching tonight as to the kind of administration that you're going to usher in that context?
The question of job scholar is a very painful one. I've known Job for a long time, and Gareth Vume, the pastor, was jailed for 34 months. These are Zimbabweans who are passionate about their country. They want to see Zimbabwe develop. They might not agree with the rest on how they must put their views across, but I believe they mean well, and this incarceration is barbaric, uncalled for, and out of line. So we need to develop from job and offer the people the security that if you come back home, no one will touch you. We need then, therefore, to move with speed, they ensure that Zimbabweans come back to exercise exactly what they're doing in the other countries across the border, be it in construction, plumbing, motor mechanics. We need that kind of service in Zimbabwe. The assurance I can give our people is that I'm not a collaborator with the regime, and I'll not collaborate with the regime. I've taken this onerous task and responsibility to lift my hand and say our people deserve a better government. Because indeed they do. You can't have what is going on. Another 5 years? No.
Mr. Saviour Kasukuwere, thank you very much for making time.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be watching closely the developments in Zimbabwe. That is Saviour Kasukuwere, is a former minister in the Zimbabwean cabinet, speaking to us from Johannesburg. He is currently an independent candidate for the upcoming presidential election in Zimbabwe in August. Thank you for watching.